like to call this committee meeting, commission meeting to order. You know, at our caucus meeting the other night, I had a gal come up to me. She says, I love getting online and listening to you guys. But she says, believe it or not, I can't hear you. That's right. She says, you got to hold that mic right in front of you. Because she says, when you're online, so we either need to pick, well, number one, we need to talk into the mic more, and I know that. But we need to turn the volume up a little, too, to help them, if there's any way. So anyway, we will try to do better. We welcome you here today. Today, our Pledge of Allegiance will be given by Ashton Wilson. Duncan Olson will be given the invocation. And our thought of the day will be given by the Honorable Commissioner Jim Harvey. We will go to that point. Ashton.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this day. We're grateful for the country that we live in, the county that we live in. We're grateful for all the many blessings that we receive. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for our government and our elected officials. Please bless them. Please help guide them in making the decisions that are in the best interests of all of us. Heavenly Father, please bless our land with more moisture, rain and snow, that we might be able to sustain our farms, our pastures, our gardens, and our way of life. Heavenly Father, please bless that we can go throughout this day in peace and safety and no harm or accident come upon us. Bless these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity. In preparing for today, I read a thought by, I can't remember the individual, but it talked about really the character of a person. Commissioners, I believe that every person appreciates when they are respected. Some people may cast judgment and say, well, that person doesn't deserve to be respected. He's a criminal, or he's done this, or she's been this, or that, or the other. And but nonetheless, still those persons accused, either rightfully or wrongfully, no matter what they did, still likes to be respected. I think showing respect shows character of the person to whom the feeling is carried. In preparing for today, it talked about people who cast poor judgment, or they're very discouraging, or they lie. We were just talking about that before we started the meeting today. It's very easy to create a lie and to cast and to be negative towards somebody. That doesn't take any integrity, but it also takes doesn't take any discipline. It's very easy to do, and it shows weak character. It takes a lot of discipline and self-worth to be able to find the good in anyone, no matter who it is or where they come from or their background. When you find someone who can find the good in anyone, you found a jewel of a person in my mind. They're a person who can respect another, no matter what the circumstance is. Eleanor Roosevelt said, and when you encounter others, she said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. As you think about that, just remember the person who is casting the stone, it describes their character more than it describes your character. And so this is my attempt to those who are listening audience today and those who may be listening later to try to be a little, to find a way to respect others on wherever you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what they're engaged in or what you're engaged in. Have a little more self-discipline so that you're able to cast a better light on your own self. And so, Commissioner, those are my thoughts today.
Great thought. Absolutely. I agree with that. Thank you. We have a special presentation today. I'm excited about this. This is the Honorable Ben Nadolski, who's here.
Honorable.
And it just so happens that he is the chair of Ogden City Council. And it's good to have him here. But that's not the hat he's got on today. We're going to take that hat off and put on the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources hat. So, Ben, time's yours. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate you having me. Again, Ben Nadolski. I'm the Northern Region Supervisor for the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources, and I'm really happy to be here. I do come once a year just to present you guys with a check. It's not the biggest check, but every bit counts. We know that. Today I'm here to present a payment in lieu of taxes for the amount of $9,063.33. These monies come to you from the pockets of our good hunters and anglers throughout Utah. We are primarily a self-supported and funded agency through the sale of licenses and permits to Utah's hunters and anglers. So this is their contribution back to you for allowing us to steward lands within your county. And since we're a government agency, we do not pay taxes, so we are happy to make this payment to you today. I know it's not the biggest check, but we really appreciate you guys putting us on the agenda each year and allowing us to do this for you. So, Mr. Chair, if it's okay to approach.
You bet it is. Ben, we appreciate you a lot, and we want you to know that. We think the world of you. You've been a wonderful individual to deal with over the years. And Commissioner Farrar and I knew you well when we were in the legislature. And it's good. Commissioners, you care to comment on this, either of you?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just, again, want to recognize Ben for not only his public service at Ogden City, but what he does for the DWR. If I'm not mistaken, maybe some of these funds came from Middle Fork area. And I got reminded yesterday when that transaction took place a number of years ago when the state actually acquired that, went from private to public. And I'll tell you, the people, not just in Ogden Valley, but this county and many others, use that recreation site for horseback riding, biking, hiking, you name it. So I think that's just another
Property for winter range and to protect and provide for the needs for wildlife. But with the need for development there, human needs in that valley, it's a perfect example of the amount of conflict that is avoided because we do have that area for wildlife to use. It doesn't mean that all conflict with wildlife goes away, as you know.
Yeah.
But imagine the amount of elk, in people's yards, and we see a lot of those issues in other parts of the state, and we just don't see the scale of it here. But another acquisition that you guys are probably aware of is we, through the help of the legislature and many of our partners in the non-governmental organizations and government agencies, we acquired Cinnamon Creek from State Institutional Trust Lands Administration. So a small portion of that WMA is in Weber County. It's mostly in Cache County. But we do have conservation officers in our Weber County team that are going to be overseeing its stewardship from a law enforcement perspective. And that's something that's going to provide a little over 8,000 acres for wildlife. And we look forward to being stewards of that land as well.
Great job. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Commissioner Harvey, you care to say anything?
Just a brief. Here's a perfect example of someone who could have phoned it in, mailed it in. But those who, and Bill, if you'll just put a Bill, oh, no, it's not Bill over there. Sorry, I didn't. But if you just put a zoom on Ben's face in there, you can see, boy, not only does he come here, but he comes here with a great smile. You can just tell the attitude and the pride he has in what he does. And you didn't have to do this, but we sure appreciate you. We appreciate you coming up and representing and asking questions. You're a wonderful representative of your organization, and we appreciate that work. And
Thank you.
through state government, what you do there with the DWR, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. We
Have a good one,
appreciate
you
it.
guys.
You bet. In the amount of $249,116. Item 3 is request for approval of the minutes held on March 22nd, which is last week. Item 4 is a request for approval of the Weber County Policy 2-500, which we questioned last week and held off. We've had a meeting on it this week, right? Item 5 is request to sell part of surplus property identified as parcel 05-112-0051, which was surplus in 12/21 of 21. Request number 6 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Great Basin Antique Farm Machinery to display at the county fair. Item 7 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Ryan Cummins to judge at the fair. Item 8 is an approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Rich Holmgren to be the auctioneer at the fair, at the junior livestock. Item 9 is a request for a contract by and between Weber County and Brent Kelly to be another auctioneer. Item 10 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Matt Drake to MC the 2022 Weber County Fair. Item 11 is a request to approve of a contract by and between Weber County and Fremont High School for graduation ceremonies. Item 12 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Fremont High School National Honor Society for National Honor Society to clean and sanitize tables for the fair. Item 13 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Weber School District for the following events: Mesa Day event, WSD Iron Kid competition, and STEM Olympiad. Item 14 is request for approval of contract by and between Weber County and the Utah State University Extension, Weber County, for the livestock show at the fair, FFA, and the 4-H. Item 15 is request for approval of memorandum of understanding by and between Weber County Sheriff's Office, Utah Department of Human Services Division of Juvenile Justice Services to allow patrolling at the Weber Juvenile Justice Center with the UAV for security and safety reasons. They met with us yesterday. Remember, we talked to that.
Yep.
All right. Item 16, request for approval of a contract by and between off-duty management requesting law enforcement services such as traffic control and security for the events and projects. Item 17 is request for approval of new business licenses. All right, Commissioners, that's everything in the consent. That's a lot of them, 17. I'm not sure I've ever seen that many.
Yeah, that's a bunch.
But it's good. That means we're moving along.
We are.
Any questions?
No, but I do want to point out specifically, if I can, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
that this year's Weber County Fair takes place on August 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th out at the Golden Spike Event Center, 1000 North, 1200 West. We ask you to come early, come frequently, and but remember, August 10th through the 13th. Put that down and come and join us in the greatest county celebration the state has to offer. It'd be really wonderful.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, you know, I'll miss having that badge that gets me in free there every day that I go out there, but I won't miss going out there every minute of every day almost. So,
There are wonderful volunteer opportunities awaiting you.
that's good. All right, all I need is a motion.
Motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second that.
Very good. We have a motion and, okay, we have a motion and a second. But before I go to that, I'm going to go to Ricky. About missed you, Ricky.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We issued 15 purchase orders this week for $249,000. 43% of that amount, or $108,000, was for the Sheriff's Office to purchase dash cam and body cam equipment and software. 39%, or $97,000, is for the library to go towards landscaping as well as audiovisual supplies. And we had 3 items at 6% of the amount, or about $15,000. One for the Health Department, which was primarily vaccines, but also some computer equipment. the Golden Spike Event Center, display equipment for the fair, as well as some computer equipment. And then for the jail, the annual maintenance contract for the body scanner machine out there. We issued 285 warrants this week for $688,000. 23% of that amount, or $159,000, was to the Weber Housing, on behalf of the Weber Housing Authority to make housing payments. 16%, or $107,000, was for our IT department to purchase cybersecurity software as well as some telephone service. 14%, or $98,000, was for the jail to provide for inmate medical services as well as food and utilities. $10,000 or 10%, or $70,000 is corridor preservation funds used to purchase land out at 5500 West in Hooper. And then 7%, or $46,000, was construction out on 5500 West in Hooper, and those are paid with transportation dollars.
Very good. Thanks, Ricky. We appreciate that. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Nobody's opposed, so that passed unanimously, our consent items. Thanks, Ricky. Appreciate that. All right, action items. First item on today is approval of a resolution appointing members to the Grandma Appeals Board. Mrs. Stacy Skeen. Thank you for doing this, Stacy.
Good morning, Commissioners. A couple weeks ago, we made appointments to the Grandma Appeals Board, and today we would just like to appoint 2 alternate members. One needs to be a county employee, so we're recommending Jennifer Graham, and the other one is a member of the public, so we're recommending Robert Frohr.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions about that?
I know both those individuals, those are great choices.
Yeah, I have no problem either.
Fair, and they're both have wonderful character and their integrity, but absolutely sustain that.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
With that, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 16-2022, appointing Ms. Graham and Bob to the Appeals Board.
I'll second that.
Very good. We have a motion and a second on Resolution 16-2022. All in favor, say aye.
Nope.
Oh, that's right.
Opposed?
Roll call vote for Resolution 16-2022. Commissioner Frohr,
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Chair Jenkins.
Aye. Sorry, you get going a little fast on these, and sometimes you forget resolutions or roll call votes. Very good. Action item 2, request for approval of an interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and Ogden City Redevelopment Agency for Flagship CRA project.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Stephanie Russell. Hi, Steph.
Good morning. A few weeks ago, Brandon Cooper from Ogden City came before you to present the interlocal agreement for the Flagship CRA. He's going to represent today, so as a refresher, and we're going to invite Brandon to come on up.
He's right behind you.
Right behind me.
Mr. Brandon Cooper.
Commissioners,
welcome
good
here
morning.
today.
Thank you.
It's good to have you
So
here.
allowing me to be here with you again. Before you, for your consideration, is the interlocal agreement between the Redevelopment Agency and the county for the Flagship CRA. And I've just got a few brief slides to refresh your memory. We've had a number of discussions on this project area for quite a few years. So as soon as we get the slides up. While she's working on that, I would like to say that in general, Ogden City enjoys a great relationship with Weber County, especially with the RDA. We have about 13 active project areas in the city right now. That's more than any other redevelopment agency in the state. We've had as many as 22 over the years. I've been with the city for about 15 years, and over that time frame, we've had about 22 at the highest level. So we could not do those things without the participation of the county and of the school district and the other entities, so we really appreciate that, and I hope that the fruits of our labor are evident. And I say our labor because that's a joint effort within the city for sure. Okay, so it looks like we're set to go. So the objective of this Flagship community reinvestment area was to essentially help the Amer Sports Group retain the facility that they have currently in Ogden City and also expand into a warehouse facility. And this was brought to us in 2018, so this is a little bit out of procedure for us normally as we do these things. So our objective in meeting with them back then was to facilitate the retention of their HQ facility, which is their North American Winter Sports Group here at the AmCan Center, and also to facilitate that new distribution warehouse at BDO. Amer came to us in 2007, and really they represented a new industry cluster for Ogden City. After the Olympics, we decided that we should probably double down on the outdoor recreation industry, and Amer Sports represented one of the incumbent companies that came and headquartered here. And from that, you can see on the slide that we've enjoyed a number of other companies and brands that have come to enjoy Ogden and Weber County and all that they offer, but also on the heels of the Amer example. And all of those companies have had varying levels of success here in Ogden. The economic impact of Amer and really the outdoor industry cluster is significant to the county and to the city. I won't go through all of that, but in facilitating the expansion of the distribution and warehouse center, there were a number of jobs to be created as a result of that. And again, there's a multiplier effect from all of those new jobs and that activity in that industry. So as a negotiation with Amer Sports, again in 2018, they were presented some incentives from the state. You can see there that they were fairly significant. The EdTIF part of that incentive from the state is similar to tax increment finance at the local level. But instead of using property and personal and real property tax, they used things like income tax and those kind of things. So the state granted a $1.3 million incentive from the EdTIF program and also a $300,000 grant from their Industrial Assistance Fund to Amer Sports. And that was to be matched with a local incentive, and that's where we come in. Again, we discussed this with the commission at that point. I know not all of you were on the commission in 2018, but at that point we discussed the option of enacting a project area that would allow for the incentive amount of about $2.1 million of personal property tax and about $360,000 from real property tax. This is just a diagram if you aren't familiar with how TIF works. I know that all of you are, but essentially it's the difference between the base year value and the post-construction or post-development value over a period of time. As we do with all of our project areas, we do some financial analysis to look at what the project value would be post-development, what the incentive amounts are requested, and we kind of back into that. So all said, with the EdTIF from the state, the industrial assistance grant from the state, and the tax increment over 10 years from the county, the school district, and Ogden City, the total incentive to Amer was a little over $4 million. Contrast that with some of the other local incentives that they were getting from other cities at the time, and this was actually the lowest incentive offered to Amer. They were getting incentives from places like Texas and Nevada in the $9 million range. But because of the effort that we all put in at the time, state and local effort, not to mention their current workforce and what they had here, they felt that even though it was a lower incentive, it was beneficial for them to stay and expand. So what is in the interlocal agreement with the county is essentially the county's participation over 10 years. It's 100% participation over that period of time, and it amounts to $638,728. You can see the other taxing entities have already signed their interlocal agreements, Ogden City and the school district being the most significant incentive over that same period of time, $1.6 million. That gets us to the $2.9 million level. Again, as we do with most of our interlocal agreements, this is a cap. So it's 10 years or the cap, whichever comes first. So if this cap's reached based on valuations over time, then the interlocal agreement between the RDA and the county expires. So it would not exceed that amount. And so just to refresh you kind of how we've gotten here, again, we've been discussing this. since 2018. The reason why it's taken so long is because their project area was part of the original DDO economic development area. So we needed to allow that to expire, which happened in 2019. We received our final payments as entities in 2020. The basis adjusted up, which means all of that new growth factored into our tax rates, respectively. And then we were then moving forward with the creation of the new project area, which is just a single lot. We don't have anything like that in our portfolio. We likely won't do it again, but we felt like it was significant enough in this case to merit such a thing. So we've approved the project area, and the last step now is to request approval of this interlocal agreement. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for Brandon?
A couple of questions, Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
So thanks, Brandon, for bringing this to us. Obviously, this was discussed 2018, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain, and I understand your sources of funds was very well explained in terms of the basically three major contributors, but what are the uses of the funds? What does Amer Sports plan on doing with that approximately $3 million?
It's a good question. So they took over an existing building. That building was retrofitted for another company who had vacated, so there was some retrofit that needed to happen to accommodate their use, and then it was equipment upscale. So all of the warehousing equipment, the robotics that go into making a warehouse work, those were the things that were targeted for the use of the funds.
And I think I know the answer to the question, but let's go on record to make sure I understand this. That in the event that they were to leave, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm assuming that these funds would not, if let's say they sold the building to another distribution center, they wouldn't automatically be transferred to another owner at that point in time.
That's correct. So we have what's called a participation and incentive agreement with Amer Sports that redirects the funds that are pledged by the entities. And a condition of the payment of that tax increment is that they stay for the 10-year period. So anytime prior to that, if they vacate or move, then those incentives stop. They're not assignable.
Okay. I think that's pretty important, because in the event they did get wooed away by another state or county, we'd want to make sure that they'd have to come back if it was a new owner or tenant, whatever, that they'd have to come back to us and ask for that TIF again.
Absolutely. We feel the same way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. If, in fact, Commissioner Harvey, got anything you'd like to say?
No, I was present from the very beginning. Appreciate if we finally getting this done.
Generated into this really unwatchable sort of modern day experiment show. And I think this is all part and parcel of it. Yes. Wow. Well,
Man, we've got somebody on there that does not have their mic muted. Could you please mute?
It's not giving me permission, but he just muted it.
All right. I just came at the tail end of that negotiation, and thanks. I remember very well this because, Commissioner Floor, if you noticed on there, the increment we gave up was 100%
Yeah, exactly.
on this. We've kind of stopped doing that. We've tried not to go to 100%. But in this case, they were being wooed, courted by another state. And,
multiple, yeah.
Not far away, and they were, man, at least double what we were, if not more.
Remember
and
that.
we were right on the verge of losing them.
That's right.
And so we elected at the time to give everything we had because there was just nothing else. In fact, we'd all but given up on them. We kind of thought we might lose them, and it turned out we didn't. But these are tough negotiations. When Commissioner Floor and I used to serve in the legislature, the taxpayers, Utah Taxpayers Association, was really down on giving too much on these CRAs, and we used to sit in there and debate these, and when you get down to this level, I'm not sure they ever did that, the Taxpayers Association. And, of course, I was the only one there. I was the only one in the legislature that had ever started a CRA. And we had out in Plain City started one. Now, we didn't ever really use it, but we set it up to be used. And anyway, when you look at the importance of this and what it brings to the community, literally, when you have older communities the way Ogden is, it's the only way you can repurpose the community, many of these old buildings. And if you don't have the ability to do this, you're just out of luck. Plus, right now, it's kind of crazy what these other states are doing. But, you know, when you look at Nevada and Wyoming and some of these other states that are close to us, their offerings are just monstrous. And they buy these companies right up to come into them. So it's tough. Anyway, Brandon, I just want you to know I appreciate your efforts here. They've been noticed from our side. And these are not tough, or not easy. They're tough.
Right.
And you've done a good job of them. I just wanted to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your participation, and I appreciate you recognizing the importance of the redevelopment tax increment finance tool. It is one of the only things that we have to compete as a city. And the number one question that I always get as an RDA administrator is when are we going to be able to stop giving incentives? And usually the answer to that is when the rest of the country stops with corporate incentives. It's the one thing that we go to help us to stay competitive. Businesses expect it, and the reality is they use it against other communities to get the best deal that they can. So I appreciate you recognizing that, and I appreciate your ongoing support.
Thanks, Brandon. And you know, when it comes to some of these pieces of property that are blighted, it's the only tool you've got as a city to try to redevelop those areas. You just don't have any other way. And you look at the is it the Smith store that was up above Monroe that you've just recently taken out?
Rite Aid.
Rite Aid. Yeah, Rite Aid that you took out. Well, that'll all be redeveloped, and that was just empty stores that nobody would take. And it's the only tool that the city's got to redevelop those. So, I don't know. We used to do battle down there on these, didn't we, Gage?
We did.
And I do understand why. There's a good point, especially when, well, in fact, this year, they come back, didn't they change it this year, the legislature, so you can't go to retail now?
There's some
In some areas.
Yeah, in some areas, so that could possibly affect us in the future. All right, Stephanie, so with that, we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion with a
Please.
comment. So I would move to approve the interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and the Ogden City Redevelopment Agency for the Flagship CRA project as presented by Ms. Stephanie Russell. And yeah, I would just highlight, Mr. Chair, what you said. Obviously, as a member of the Governor's Economic Opportunity Commission, EdTIF and TIF was discussed, and at least two pieces of legislation came out, one dealing with EdTIF, the other dealing with retail incentives provided by cities and counties. And I agree that there are cities, and I think Ogden is probably the poster child, at least in my mind, for areas that wouldn't be developed unless we had that TIF tool in our toolbox to use to instead. Now, there are other cities that I think sometimes, and we looked at this as the Economic Opportunity Commission, that use that for the benefit of the owner, tenant, retailer versus the city. So in this case, I fully support this, and I think Ogden City, as we move forward, and even though there will be some limitations, is a good candidate for the continuation of the TIF program in Weber County. So
that was a motion.
That was a motion.
Very good.
I'll second, if I could have just a moment of privilege.
Sure.
TIF, or a tax increment financing, for those who are thinking, why is government giving up their property tax value? If you let me explain what that is just briefly. If you have a city block and it's full of houses, and the value of all those houses, we'll say, is $5 million. That tax that the city and the counties and everybody, the city receives off that is $5 million. The increment, so if they clear that off of those houses and they build some big apartments or they build big buildings or businesses there, and the new value is $50 million, The increment between 5 million and 50 million is what we're talking about. The tax is still paid on the original $5 million. The city doesn't lose any more tax on that, only for that period of time. That's why we discussed in this particular instance, it's for 10 years. Those are the tools they use. But after that, then on year 11, then the difference between the 5 million and the 50 million is then realized by the city, and it becomes really good. That's why the school district agreed to do this. You know, in this particular case, they're not educating any of the children that are going to be out at a business like that, and so they were able to give, they agreed to give that up, but after 10 years, that extra tax money will go to the school district. Now, let's just say we don't do something like this. Then the business doesn't come, and in 10 years, that same city block is still worth $5 million, or a little more because houses go up. But then maybe it's worth $6 million. But the tax on 50 million and the tax on $6 million in 10 years, you know, if the 50 million, if you're going to use that comparison, then it's 60 million. So the tax on 60 million and 6 million incrementally is a lot of difference. So it becomes a good deal. I just wanted to explain that. So that's my second with a little comment.
Thank you very much. So, Stephanie, we don't do many of these, and nowadays, we've kind of set a policy where we try very hard not to go over 70%, right?
Correct.
And we try not to go over 10 years in length.
Correct.
Now, I'm not saying we don't go over once in a while, but we try not to. So now, to Commissioner Harvey's explanation, our tax increment would continue to grow by the 30%. Now, it wouldn't grow at the full rate.
Correct.
But it would continue to grow during that period of time.
At 70%.
Right. Very good. So we'll have a motion and a second for this. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate that. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you. We appreciate you. Item 3 on our approval list is the first reading of an ordinance of the County Commission of Weber County amending the fee schedule for the Weber County Sheriff's Office. Chief Aaron Perry. Chief, good to have you here today.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Commissioners. The Sheriff's Office provides law enforcement services for a lot of different special events. These range from private events out at the fairgrounds to traffic control for construction projects, movie sets, and then large events such as marathons and bike races that we provide those services for. We cover these to not impact our daily patrol staffing. We cover these through overtime shifts that we post. And then we charge the fee to cover those shifts back to the organization requesting those services, whether it's the marathon or whether it's the private individual having the private event at the fairgrounds. We are asking to increase our fee schedule. It hasn't been changed for several years. The old fee was $50 an hour. The new fee would be $63.60. And in addition to increasing the fee for deputies, we've also added additional fees for supervisors, which gives us the ability for larger events to, for example, if we decide we need to staff 4 deputies and a supervisor to manage those, that we can then bill for that separate rate for the supervisor to recover that higher rate of cost that we incur to have a supervisor there on scene. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
I'm rather familiar with this, Commissioners, as we've contracted those services for decades out at the fairgrounds. But this is in your portfolio, Commissioner Farrar.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's always wise to analyze our fees that we charge for these outside events. Commissioner Jenkins and I were in the legislature. We dealt with this with a lot of different fees, and I think it's just a healthy practice to keep up. I would say that, you know, I noticed just yesterday that the Ironman World Championship is moving for the first time ever from Kona, Hawaii, to St. George, Utah. Wow. The World Championship, bringing about 3,000 to 3,500 participants, and to that economy, about $30 million. So, you know, we talk about these events, the marathons, obviously there's nothing that we have that compares to that, but these are healthy events if they're managed right, and with the Sheriff's Department, we can keep track of traffic and some other issues. So it's very critical that we have our public safety involved with those. But at the end of the day, if we manage these events right, they're a plus for our community. Sales tax, hotel rooms, that they come home, they come here, spend their money, restaurants, hotels, etc., and then they go home, which is not a bad way to have it. So
I agree with that. Plus, there's one other thing I like about this. Our sheriffs work very hard, and when they get a chance to pick up some overtime, I want to, if they want to take it, I want to incentivize them and give them an attaboy for doing it. So if they get a chance to work for 4 or 5 hours in the morning or an evening and go time and a half, I think they ought to be able to receive that. And I do the same thing at our company. We try very hard to be competitive, and so you can't pay big wages, but when opportunities come by, and it's the same thing out there, when somebody needs a tub delivered late at night and they have to have it, I want to incentivize my man for standing and making that delivery and paying him extra. That's the same thing here. I want to incentivize our deputies and pay them extra, because they're the ones that are there and doing the work, and gee, this is the opportunity for them to benefit a little bit. And why not? Why not help our people? Mm-hmm. And so I'm very much in favor of raising these fees and allowing our deputies to get time and a half in these circumstances. It's a good bonus for them.
Thank you.
You bet.
And I just might make a comment on that. The nice part about it is with these fees, that extra money that may go to those deputies comes from the event organizer rather than the county coffers. That be correct, Chief?
That's correct.
So that's the nice part about it as well. With that, I'm happy to make a motion.
I'd love to have it.
So I would move to approve, is that an ordinance or not?
First
No, this is the first reading, excuse me. I'd move to approve the first reading of the ordinance of the County Commissioners of Weber County, amending the fee schedule for the Weber County Sheriff's Office. First
Very good.
reading.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. There's no number on that, so all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Very good, that's approved. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you,
Appreciate that.
Mr.
Next.
Chair?
Yes?
Thank you for recognizing me. I learned that from you. I'd like to have Ms. Wilson, when she comes up, if she could include 4 through 14 in the efforts of being as efficient as possible, that she present them all, then we just go through them at the end instead of one at a time.
Well, hold on, I'm not so sure I wanted to do
Oh,
that.
that's okay. That's your privilege as the chair.
I'm okay with that. Okay. So the chair will recognize Ashton Wilson today for the purpose of going through all the contracts that are related to the fair, 4 through 14. So, Ms. Ashton Wilson, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. First off, we have Wooden Creations. You guys have all seen this. This has been a staple at the fair for many years. What's nice about this contract is they charge me a flat fee. We charge people for the carvings that they purchase, and so it ends up pretty much covering its cost to us.
That's item 4.
Correct.
Item 5?
5 is a new petting zoo. I had mentioned to you guys that Connie, with our previous petting zoo, is retiring and doing something different. So I found these guys out of Grantsville. They're local, which is nice. So new petting zoo, same location. Number 6 is the Birdman. We were at a conference last fall and we saw him perform, and we loved it. We booked him. He does, it's educational too, which is nice. It's a stage show so the kids can come watch. So that's the Birdman. Number 7 is Boom. You guys saw these guys last year. They're kind of back by popular demand. We heard nothing but good things about them. They interact with the crowd and kind of do pop-up performances. So
They were the ones that were walking through
exactly.
the crowd.
Yep.
Right.
They do the
drummers?
garbage
They were
cans
fun.
and things like that.
They were very popular.
Yes. Number 8 is Bullfighters. If you guys remember, we did bullfighting in 2019. This is a different group that's doing this. Duncan the other day kind of explained it. They were kind of minor leagues. These guys are the major leagues. The production value that comes with these guys is much more professional, and we're really excited for these guys to come out. We're not doing the Indian relay races, and so this is one of the portions that we're kind of replacing that with.
So you just said we're doing away with the Indian relay race?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We kind of had some good talks, and we gave them 3 years, and our ticket sales were not going up, so we're keeping it.
And they were expensive.
They were,
Yeah.
especially what we got in the return on ticket sales. So,
Right.
Number 9, Dangerous Feats of Comedy. This is another show. It has the potential of being a pop-up performance, which is nice. You know, when an event gets over, kind of drawing the crowd elsewhere. They do different types of stunts. They have a guy wrapped up in a straitjacket with chains wrapped around him, and he gets out of it. So we're excited to have them for the first time. Number 10 is the Demolition Derby. That's always Saturday's main attraction. This is actually a 3-year agreement with our producer. And you guys have all been to the Derby. Number 11 is the Hypnotist. We had this gal for the first time last year. She did an awesome job, so she'll be over on the exhibit hall again, the exhibit hall stage. Number 12, Mad Chad. I know Commissioner Harvey's seen a video of him that we showed in our board meeting. He does all sorts of cool stunts. He juggles chainsaws, and he actually drug Duncan on stage with him at the conference we went to and had me in tears laughing so hard. So we're really excited. His agent is the same one as Boom, so we actually got a really good deal on him as well. Number 13 is Robot Rangers. They are like 10, 11-foot robots that stroll around the fair and interact with kids and take pictures and things like that. Bubble Tower, which we've had in the past that people loved with walking on stilts, they got another fair, so this is kind of a replacement to that, just to focus on the kids and the youth that'll be at the fair. Number 14 is the Sheriff's Posse. They handle the parking and everything that goes on in our west. As you guys know, we are losing some of that parking, and so we'll adjust according to that. But this is nice because they use that funding towards their club and its expenses.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions?
I'm good.
Commissioner Harvey, this is in your portfolio.
Yeah, this is one of the things on especially the Birdman. He has a couple of big birds like condors and then also birds of prey. And boy, this is going to be really a neat thing to bring to our fair. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve under item G, our action items, item 4 through and including 14 as presented by Ashton Wilson this morning.
And I'll second that.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. It's approved. Thanks, Ashton. All right, next up is a request for approval of contract between Weaver County and Stern Dirt Racing to produce the 2022 Halloween Havoc Demolition Derby. Mr. Duncan Olson.
Good morning, Commissioners. The fairground show continues. So this first contract is between us and Stern Dirt. It's supposed to be for, is it May Mania or Halloween Havoc? It is for Havoc. So it's just almost the same contract that we had for May Mania. This is just getting him on the books for October to host his Halloween Havoc. It's his biggest one of the year. They bring anything that can run and they crash it till it doesn't. So same kind of deal where we've adjusted the rates and removing some of the chutes and different things. But we make well over $20,000 in food and beer, and so it works out good for us.
Good. All right, Commissioner Harvey.
This is a great show, and it's those who follow the derbies think these are some of the best derbies in all the land. So it's with the. I'm happy to if you're ready for a motion, I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the contract between Weaver County and Stern Dirt for the Halloween Havoc.
Second that.
Very good. Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Next up is a request for a contract between Weaver County, Utah Cutting Horse Association to hold the cutting horse competition. Duncan?
Yeah, if I could, I'd like to kind of present the next two together. They're associated. So the one is their spring show and the one is their fall show. We've worked a deal out with the Cutting Association that we would help discount and sponsor a little heavier on the fall and less so on the spring. Mainly because the spring show, it's a 4 or 5 day show and the labor is far greater to pull it off. The fall show last year, I think it turned out to be 12 days. And so it was a little bit easier for us to just keep operating once the sand and everything was set up and good to go. And so it is a little bit of discount and sponsorship on both of them. Not so much on the spring show, which is the first, which is item number 16. Item number 17 has a little heavier, but we made upwards of $100,000 in revenue off of the cutting shows last year, so we want to keep them happy and keep them here.
Very good. Questions, Commissioner Faur?
Not for me, thank you.
Commissioner Harvey, this is your portfolio.
A lot of things running through my mind. Knew they'd be back, and I'm glad that we're doing the contracts early. That's super important to me. I love to see contracts 9, 10, even 11 months in advance. So I realize some of these is a little early, and not so much, but it's good. This is a great group. Most of these people, commissioners, are owners, CEOs, or presidents of their own companies or organizations that participate in this. It's the second highest cash generating tourism for horses besides the thoroughbreds that we have in the United States, and the hotels absolutely feel a tremendous impact on when these guys come to town. It's overwhelming, and a lot of restaurants, I mean, all the time, and so it's a good group. So I'll make a recommendation, or I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve both contracts between Weber County and Utah Cutting Horse Association, one for the spring show and one for the fall cutting horse event.
I'll second that.
Very good. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. That's approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. We
Thank you,
appreciate
Commissioners.
that very
I
much.
did want to mention one other thing real quick. We had several items that went on the consent. A lot of stuff to do with the school districts. I'm not sure why they weren't on action items, but I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that it's really that school district rate. We love having the school district around, the Iron Kid, the Olympiad, helping try to give a place for those guys to do their competitions and stuff. But I just wanted to make sure that was kind of on the record that that's what that's for. So.
Duncan, right now you seem to have done more business with the school district and schools this year than you've done in a long time.
Yeah, and especially over the last couple of years, the school districts kind of took a back seat because of COVID and the restrictions,
Right.
and we were there ready and waiting for them to come back whenever they were ready, so we're excited.
Well, these buildings are, it's really good that you can go ahead and do that.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks,
very good.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next item, Commissioners, is was public hearing, so I'm looking for a motion to go into a public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn our public meeting and convene a public hearing.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Very good. Public meeting today is here to discuss and take action on county-initiated ordinances to amend various sections of the county land use code to adjust and clarify permitted and conditional uses, site development standards in the manufacturing zones, M1, 2, and 3, and MV, and to take general administrative and clerical amendments. Our presenter today is Mr. Scott Perks.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yes, go ahead.
So, as you're aware, this last year the county was approached by a food manufacturing business who was looking to potentially locate out west in the manufacturing zones. A business of a larger scale, and as they were doing due diligence, they took a look at our manufacturing zoning ordinance and our land use code to see where they may have some issues with locating in our county. And so county staff initiated a text amendment to comb through our existing ordinances to see if there was anything that would potentially be a constraint or limit to the ability to attract a business such as a food manufacturing company. So we went through a couple different sections, primarily the manufacturing zoning ordinance, which contains the MV1, M1, M2, and M3 zones. So that's up in the valley as well as out west as a collective group. And we identified a few changes to facilitate food manufacturing. Primarily, what we were looking at was some smelly or some dirty types of manufacturing processes that could be bottled up in a food product that could impact that manufacturing process. So uses such as fat rendering, rubber products, hazardous products like chemicals, paints, inks, those types of things. So as you look through the ordinance, what we've done is we've indicated that all the uses are indoor unless specifically stated otherwise as outdoor or as a yard of some sort. And then anybody who wants to locate out west would go through a process of review where we look to see what is the process and is there any potential impact on a neighboring land use. We also had a couple of concerns raised by this company doing due diligence with regards to our zoning process and rezoning process. As part of the application and a few of those things. So we worked with them on going through our definition of a lot of record, for example, where a lot of these businesses that are looking to locate in our county are looking at really large parcels, some of which exceed our zoning minimums. So we made some adjustments to make sure that they could find a parcel without going through too much due diligence before we could entertain an application. We also had some concerns raised by this potential business about design review and going through the process, thinking they had approvals and then have to go back through design review when they were to pull a building permit. So one of the things that we had adjusted in the ordinance for our design review requirements was that if they have a development agreement, a larger scale development goes through the development agreement process, that we could waive the design review process that comes later at the building permit if that development agreement is reviewed through a legislative process by the Planning Commission and County Commission. But in total, this business may or may not end up coming out to Weber County, but we believe that the adjustments to this, to the land use code and the manufacturing zones is in an effort to improve our land use regulations and potentially attract other businesses that might be looking to locate in our county. Do you guys have any questions on the proposal? I'm happy to go through any specifics.
I do not. Commissioner Faur?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
with your permission. So, Mr. Perks, can you tell me about when the M1 through M3 zones were placed on that property out west?
It's been quite some time. If you look in the general plan, the manufacturing zones have been identified out west for several years. The 2003 West Weber general plan show that area as manufacturing. So it's been quite some time as being identified for these types of uses.
Yeah, I think 2003, probably even before that. I know that GSL was out there and WZ was out there probably in the last 45, 50 years ago, if not more.
Correct.
So I support this. Now, again, whether we want to be clear whether we have a food manufacturer that comes into this county or not, that's not the primary reason this is being pushed. We're looking at that zone out there that in an M2, M3 would allow chemical companies, would allow factoring, some other companies that would not necessarily what I consider to be neighborhood or community friendly. So this gives us the ability to dial those back a little bit, go into a development agreement so we know exactly what we're going to get. And does this include some of the form-based code we talked about or not?
It does not.
Okay.
Nope, not yet.
All right. So that's the other probably discussion we'll have in the future is that when and if that ever develops out there, which good possibility it won't be in my lifetime, but when it does, I think the form-based code is very important as that community grows out there. But I just want to be clear that this is actually what I would call kind of a down zone from the M2, M3 that would require those companies to come in to show that they're going to be good neighbors and gives us the ability to control exactly how and what they do out there. So I'm in support of the amendments.
Very good. Commissioner Harvey?
Like most commission meetings, it's always good to hear from the public within the public comment portion of this meeting. So I'm anxious to hear from the public that are either here in person or online for that when that time comes.
But no comment yourself?
No.
Very good. Well, we'll go to the, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
We'll go to the public comment portion of this meeting then. All the public that's here, you are welcome to step forward and comment on this, any of you that would care to.
Look like Sylvia's gonna come up.
Doesn't, does it? Well, okay, then we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of this.
Is there any online?
Any online, Stace?
Gary has a thumbs up, but
Great, thank you.
Who had the thumbs up?
Gary Haas
Oh,
gave a thumbs up.
all right.
Very good. Well, then with that, we'll go to the,
Mr. Chair, do you need a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
I do.
Okay, I'd move to adjourn our public hearing and reconvene as a public meeting.
Very good.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're back in a regular public meeting. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry we didn't have any public to comment. All right. Action to be taken if we desire to do so. Commissioner Faure, this is, well, actually, I wouldn't say this is in your portfolio.
It's probably yours.
Yeah,
Your
it's
zoning.
probably my portfolio. I should like to state and request or let you know on this, I'm supportive of this. This has been an industrial site, manufacturing site ever since I was a little kid.
Long time.
So when you said, well, not a little kid, but anyway, kid. So when you talk about 50 years, I think it has been at least 50 years. This is the old SP, Southern Pacific Railroad, industrial area out there, manufacturing. And it was out there so far that we didn't have a lot of activity on it. But what's happened now is these sites across the state are just be taken up, and there just are not any industrial sites left of this magnitude anywhere in the state. And when you look even in the western United States, there's really none of like this. So all of a sudden, this site is public awareness has gone way up, and we have a lot of activity. We've had a lot of people bite. Now we've not been able to reel one of these companies in yet, but we've come very, very close. And it's just a matter of time before one of these sites gets picked up. So I'm very much in favor of what's happening here and supportive of that. And I just want you two to know it.
Great. With that, Mr. Chair, if you'd recognize a motion,
I would.
I'd make a motion that we approve the request for the ordinance to amend the county-initiated sections of that to MV1, M1, M2, and M3 to include a general administrative and the clerical amendments that were presented today.
Good. Is there a number on that?
There is.
Ordinance.
2022-09.
Very good.
And I'll second that.
And I'm happy to second the motion with a comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So I think this is just a good timing, that we're not actually looking at any one company, so nobody can say that we're doing this in favoritism. This is really about the future of Weber County and being able to have control over what goes on that site rather than, so we can be proactive rather than reactive when somebody comes to this county, and it sets the guidelines for the future.
Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I was going to say, we've had quite a bit of interest from different types of companies, and I don't think that interest is going to go away anytime soon. So it's good for that we take a look at our current regulations and find ways that maybe it should be improved for what the future looks like.
That's it.
Very good. So I'm recognizing a motion from Commissioner Harvey and a second from Commissioner Faure.
Correct.
Mr. Brandt?
Okay, roll call vote for ordinance 2022-09. Commissioner Faure?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Chair Jenkins?
Aye. Very good. It passes. Very good. So this ends our public hearing and the motion, the votes on that, and it really ends our agenda today. So with that, commissioners, commissioner comments. Commissioner Harvey, comment?
Just briefly, only to say that you'll notice earlier today through our meetings that Marty Smith was here. Last week, Marty Smith had a fairly significant orthopedic surgery. He took 3 or 4 days off. The doctor said, I needs to be here, needs to be home a little longer. Marty said, no, I've got things I've got to do. I got to make sure that, and I says, Marty, I don't want you coming in. Marty doesn't follow directions very good because he was here today. He loves his work so much and he's so dedicated, and I can't follow a guy with that much passion for his work, so I appreciate that. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just say good work today. Appreciate our fine staff, as always, to bring these issues to us, and look forward to the next week or so.
I agree with that. Well, I have nothing to say today either. It's been a good week. We had our, I should mention that we had our caucus meetings the other night, and at that meeting we had a fair amount of people ask us why we'd taken public comment off. And so we will have public comment again starting next Tuesday. First of April, first meeting in April. So here we go. We'll go again. So thank you all. With that, I'm ready for one more motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner.